everyone is well. And today we are going to read, I have not read any of this myself. I did glance at the table of contents for SQ3R, but I have not read any of it. It is Quotations from Chairman Mao Tse-Tung. I had to send away for this. It's not a book that's in every library, but we'll get started on that. But first, here is my shout out, is my nail file. I think I got it at Target, I don't remember. And this is my product placement window cleaner or glass cleaner. And then we will get started with the book of Chairman Mao. I thought it would be a good idea for us to look it over. I don't know if we're going to read the entire thing, but we'll get started on it and see how it goes. It is a good idea to always understand what your opponent thinks and how they behave and what their justifications behind their behavior is. And we will read in the future. We'll read good morning. We'll read The Art of War. Hi, how are you? Which is another good story if you are a leader in any way or strive to be a leader. It is a good idea to read The Art of War, and it doesn't have to pertain to war. Of course, we strive to never have to learn war, but you do want to be a good leader and a good steward. So we will look here at Quotations from Chairman Mao Tse-Tung. And these are excerpts from the Little Red Book, which is standard reading in China. And the table of contents is quite extensive in this, so we'll just glance at the table of contents. And at first I will read the introduction from it. It was first published in March of 1967. And this book, the Red Book by Mao Tse-Tung, it started a revolution. It made China what it is today. Like it or not, it is what it is. So here is the introduction. And the introduction, let's see who wrote it, is by A. Doak Barnett, written in February 22nd, 1967 in New York City. And it's only a brief introduction, so it'll set us up for the rest of the book, so I'll read that. This book is probably the world's bestseller today. In the great proletarian cultural revolution convulsing communist China, Peking has flooded the country with literally tens of millions of copies of Quotations from Chairman Mao Tse-Tung in an effort, good morning, to defy Mao and all of his works. Everywhere, young Chinese are carrying their little red copies of the book, memorizing Mao's sayings and reciting them aloud in a fashion reminiscent of the way Chinese in past ages recited Confucius' saying. Because the book contains the essence of Maoism as now officially defined, it has become sacred scripture for 1/5 of mankind. One can legitimately ask, even though millions of Chinese are now reading these extracts from Maoist dogma, why should Americans bother to do so? There are good reasons. For this foreseeable future, how to cope with China will be one of the most difficult problems for U.S. foreign policy. To deal with China successfully, we must clearly improve our understanding of the forces now at work there. And to achieve this improved understanding, some knowledge of the thought of Mao Tse-Tung is essential. For these reasons, the non-communist world cannot afford to ignore Mao's writing on subjects such as class struggle, the mass lying, and people's war, as summarized in this volume. In Mao's view, ideology is not simply abstract philosophy. It is a critical weapon in the communist struggle to revolutionize China and the world. Many of the sayings quoted in this volume may sound to some like platitudinous Marxist-Leninist abstractions. But they are much more than that. They are sermons aimed at creating dedicated revolutionaries and prescriptions designed to provide them with a practical guide on how to conduct uninterrupted revolution. The origins of most of Mao's thoughts can be traced to earlier Marxist-Leninist writing, but there is a distinctive and in many respects unique flavor to much of what China's defied communist leader has written. One is struck particularly by the stress which he places on the role of human will in his history. Nothing in the world is difficult for one who sets his mind to it, Mao proclaims. In recent years, however, Mao has been profoundly disturbed by the loss of elan and momentum in the revolution in China, and by trends which he fears may erode the character of the Chinese Revolution after his death. The current massive reindoctrination campaign, which in sheer scope must be unprecedented in history, is Mao's attempt to combat such trends, and the capsulated version of Maoist concepts contained in this volume is the principal textbook for the campaign. As the Cultural Revolution has progressed, it is turned into a bitter struggle between Maoist and anti-Maoist over the future of China. And it is clear that there are many anti-Maoists in China who believe that much of what Mao has stood for is now obsolete. But whoever wins the struggle, they are likely to appeal it and quote concepts and sayings that are included in this book. The most scriptural writings, Mao's sermons, can be interpreted in innumerable ways. The Maoists can appeal to certain writings which emphasize the need for revolutionary radicalism and self-sacrifice, while the anti-Maoists can stress others which prescribe pragmatic realism and the need to adapt policy to reality. Whether China moves in the direction of increased revolutionary radicalism, as Mao now prescribes, or in the direction of greater pragmatism, as many of Mao's opponents now urge, the concepts outlined in this volume are likely to provide the revolutionary ideological and policy debate of Communist China for a long time to come. A. Doak Barnett. So this will be very interesting to read. He wrote all of this almost 56 years ago. And as we notice, China has become, I dare say, quite capitalistic in their achievements in manufacturing and so forth. So we won't read some of these other literary criticisms of the book that occupy the first section of it. So let me skip to the table of contents, and that'll give us a preview of what we have to look forward to. So it'd be interesting now, like I said, I have not read this book. I just kind of glanced at it on my way home in the subway. I did not read it yet because I wanted to save it for us to read it together. Let's see if I can find the table of contents. Okay, so I'll look at the table of contents here, and we'll start. I'm not sure if we'll read it all, but I definitely want us to read some of it. I think it's a benefit for us to read this, to know what China thinks, how they think, what molded their current culture, in order for us to be more competitive with them. They are our opponent, but I don't call them our enemy. And China, from what I understand, does not have access to YouTube, although I have conversed with people that claim to be in China on YouTube. Yeah, I guess they have a way, maybe they're in Hong Kong. I understand Hong Kong still is able to access YouTube, Google, and Facebook, but I'm not sure about the interior of China. But I have, like I said, there have been people that I've watched their live stream, and they claim to be in China, but it is a good idea for us to have a better understanding of Chinese culture, and for us here in the West. So here is the table of contents: the Communist Party, classes and class struggle, socialism and communism, the correct handling of contradictions among people, war and peace, Imperialism and all reactionaries are paper tigers, dare to struggle and dare to win. People's war, the People's Army, leadership of party committees, the mass line, political work, relations between officers and men, relations between the army and the people, democracy in the three main fields, education and the training of troops, serving the people, patriotism and internationalism, revolutionary heroism, building our country through diligence and frugality, self-reliance and arduous struggle, methods of thinking and methods of work, investigation and study, ideological self-cultivation, unity, discipline, criticism and self-criticism, communist, cadres, youth, women, culture and art, study. And that was the table of contents. So we will just get started. Chapter 1, the Communist Party. The force at the core leading our cause forward is the Chinese Communist Party. The theoretical basis guiding our thinking is Marxism and Leninism. If there is to be revolution, there must be a revolutionary party. Without a revolutionary party, without a party built on the Marxist-Leninist revolutionary theory and in the Marxist-Leninist revolutionary style, it is impossible to lead the working class and the broad masses of the people in defeating imperialism and its running dogs. Without the efforts of the Chinese Communist Party, without the Chinese Communists as the mainstay of the Chinese people, China can never achieve independence and liberation, or industrialization and the modernization of her agriculture. The Chinese Communist Party is the core of leadership of the whole Chinese people. Without this core, the cause of socialism cannot be victorious. A well-disciplined party armed with the theory of Marxism and Leninism, using the method of self-criticism and linked with the masses of the people, an army under the leadership of such a party, a united front of all revolutionary classes and all revolutionary groups under the leadership of such a party. These are the three main weapons with which we have defeated the enemy. We must have faith in the masses, and we must have faith in the party. These are two cardinal principles. If we doubt these principles, we shall accomplish nothing. Armed with Marxist-Leninist theory and ideology, the Communist Party of China has brought a new style of work to the Chinese people. A style of work which essentially entails integrating theory with practice, forging close links with the masses, and practicing self-criticism. No political party can lead a great revolutionary movement to victory unless it possesses revolutionary theory and a knowledge of history and has a profound grasp on the practical movement. As we used to say, the rectification movement is a widespread movement of Marxist education. Rectification means the whole party studying Marxism through criticism and self-criticism. We can certainly learn more about Marxism in the course of the Restification movement. It is an arduous task to ensure a better life for the several 100 million people of China and to build our economically and culturally backward country into a prosperous and powerful one with a high level of culture. And it is precisely in order to be able to shoulder this task more competently and work better together with all non-party people who are actuated by high ideals and determined to institute reforms that we must conduct rectification movements both now and in the future and constantly rid ourselves of whatever is wrong. Policy is the starting point of all the practical actions of a revolutionary party and manifests itself in the process and the end results of that party's action. A revolutionary party is carrying out a policy whenever it takes any action. If it is not carrying out a correct policy, it is carrying out a wrong policy. If it is not carrying out a given policy consciously, it is doing so blindly. What we call experience is the process and the end result of carrying out a policy. Only through the practice of the people, that is, through experience, can we verify whether a policy is correct or wrong and determine to what extent it is correct or wrong. But people's practice, especially the practice of a revolutionary party and the revolutionary masses, cannot but be bound up with one policy or another. Therefore, before any action is taken, we must explain the policy which we have formulated in the light of the given circumstances to party members and to the masses. Otherwise, party members and the masses will depart from the guidance of our policy, act blindly, and carry out a wrong policy. Our party has laid down the general line and general policy of the Chinese Revolution, as well as various specific lines for work and specific policies. However, while many comrades remember our party's specific lines for work and specific policies, they often forget its general line and general policy. If we actually forget the party's general line and general policy, then we shall be blind, half-baked, muddle-headed revolutionaries, and when we carry out a specific line for work and a specific policy, we shall lose all bearings and vacillate now to the left and now to the right, and the work will suffer. Policy and tactics are the life of the party. Leading comrades at all levels must give them full attention and must never on any account be negligent. Chapter 2 of Quotations from Chairman Mao Tse-Tung. Classes and class struggle. Classes struggle. Some classes triumph. Others are eliminated. Such is history. Such is the history of civilization for thousands of years. To interpret history from this viewpoint is historical materialism. Standing in opposition to this viewpoint is hysterical idealism. In class society, everyone lives as a member of a particular class, and every kind of thinking, without exception, is stamped with the brand of a class. Changes in society are due chiefly to the development and of the internal contradictions in society, that is, the contradiction between the productive forces and the relations of production, the contradiction between classes and the contradiction between the old and the new. It is the development of these contradictions that pushes society forward and gives the impetus for the supersession of the old society by the new. The ruthless economic exploitation and political oppression of the peasants by the landlord class forced them into numerous uprisings against its rule. It was the class struggles of the peasants, the peasant uprising and the peasant wars that constituted the real motive force of historical development in Chinese feudal society. In the final analysis, national struggle is a matter of class struggle. Among the whites in the United States, it is only the reactionary ruling circles who oppress the black people. They can in no way represent the workers, farmers, revolutionary intellectuals, and other enlightened persons who comprise the overwhelming majority of the white people. It is up to us to organize the people. As for the reactionaries in China, it is up to us to organize the people to overthrow them. Everything reactionary is the same. If you don't hit it, it won't fall. This is also like sweeping the floor. As a rule, where the broom does not reach, the dust will not vanish of itself. The enemy will not perish of himself. Neither the Chinese reactionaries nor the aggressive forces of U.S. imperialism in China will step down from the stage of history of their own accord. A revolution is not a dinner party, or writing an essay, or painting a picture, or doing embroidery. It cannot be so refined, so leisurely and gentle, so temperate, kind, courteous, restrained, and magnanimous. A revolution is an insurrection, an act of violence by which one class overthrows another. Chiang Kai-shek always tries to wrest every ounce of power and every ounce of gain from the people, and our policy is to give him tit for tat and to fight for every inch of land. We act after his fashion. He always tries to impose war on the people, one sword in his left hand and another in his right. We take up swords too, following his example. As Chiang Kai-shek is now sharpening his swords, we must sharpen ours too. Who are our enemies? Who are our friends? This is a question of the first importance for the revolution. The basic reason why all previous revolutionary struggles in China achieved so little was their failure to unite with real friends in order to attack real enemies. A revolutionary party is the guide of the masses, and no revolution ever succeeds when the revolutionary party leads them astray. To ensure that we definitely achieve success in our revolution and will not lead the masses astray, we must pay attention to uniting with our real friends in order to attack our real enemies. To distinguish real friends from real enemies, we must make a general analysis of economic status of the various classes in Chinese society and of their respective attitudes toward the revolution. Our enemies are those in league with the imperialism and warlords, the bureaucrats, the comprador class, the big landlord class, and the reactionary section of the intelligentista attached to them. The leading force in our revolution is the industrial proletariat. Our closest friends are the entire semi-proletariat and petty bourgeoisie. As for the vacillating middle bourgeoisie, the right wing may become our enemy and our left wing may become our friend, but we must be constantly on our guard and not let them create confusion within our ranks. Whoever sides with the revolutionary people is a revolutionary. Whoever sides with the imperialism, feudalism, and bureaucratic capitalism is a counter-revolutionary. Whoever sides with the revolutionary people in words only but acts otherwise in a revolutionary in speech. Whoever sides with the revolutionary people in deed as well as in word is a revolutionary in full sense. I hold that it is bad as far as we are concerned if a person, a political party, an army, or a school is not attacked by the enemy. For in that case, it would be definitely mean that we have sunk to the level of the enemy. It is good if we are attacked by the enemy, since it proves that we have drawn a clear line of demarcation between the enemy and ourselves. It is still better if the enemy attacks us wildly and paints us as utterly black without a single virtue. It demonstrates that we have not only drawn a clear line of demarcation between the enemy and ourselves, but achieved a great deal in our work. We should support whatever the enemy opposes and opposes whatever the enemy supports. Our stand is that the proletariat of the masses, for members of the Communist Party, this means keeping to the stand of the party, keeping the party spirit and party policy. After the enemies with guns have been wiped out, there will still be enemies without guns. They are bound to struggle desperately against us, and we must never regard these enemies lightly. If we do not now raise and understand the problem in this way, we shall commit the gravest mistakes. The imperialist and domestic reactionaries will certainly not take their defeat lying down, and they will struggle to the last ditch. After there is peace and order throughout the country, They will still engage in sabotage and create disturbances in various ways, and will try every day and every minute to stage a comeback. This is inevitable and beyond all doubt, and under no circumstances must we relax our vigilance. In China, although the main socialist transformation has been completed with respect to the system of ownership, and although the large scale and turbulent class struggles of the masses, characteristics of the previous revolutionary periods, have in the main come to an end, there are still remnants of the overthrown landlord or the comprador classes. There is still a bourgeoisie, and the remolding of the petty bourgeoisie has only just started. The class struggle is by no means over. The class struggle between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, the class struggle between the different political forces, and the class struggle in the ideological field between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie will continue to be long and torturous, and at times will even become very acute. The proletariat seeks to transform the world according to its own world outlook, and so does the bourgeoisie. In this respect, the question of which will win out, socialism or capitalism, is still not really settled. It will take a very long period of time to decide the issue in the ideological struggle between socialism and capitalism in our country. The reason is that the influence of the bourgeoisie and of the intellectuals who come from the old society will remain in our country for a long time to come, and so will their class ideology. If this is not sufficiently understood, or is not understood at all, the gravest mistakes will be made, and the necessity of waging the struggle in the ideological field will be ignored. In our country, bourgeois and petty bourgeoisie ideology, anti-Marxist ideology, will continue to exist for a long time. Basically, the socialist system has been established in our country. We have won the basic victory in transforming the ownership of the means of production, but we have not yet won the complete victory of the political and ideological fronts. In the ideological field, the question of who will win in the struggle between the proletariat and the bourgeois has not been really settled yet. We still have to wage a protracted struggle against bourgeois and petty bourgeois ideology. It is wrong not to understand and to give up ideological struggle. All erroneous ideas, all poisonous weeds, all ghosts and monsters must be subjected to criticism. In no circumstance should they be allowed to spread unchecked. However, the criticism should be fully reasoned, analytical and convincing, and not rough, bureaucratic, metaphysical, or dogmatic. Both dogmatism and revisionism run counter to Marxism. Marxism must certainly advance. It must develop along the development of practice and cannot stand still. It would become lifeless if it remained stagnant and stereotyped. However, the basic principles of Marxism must never be violated, or otherwise mistakes will be made. It is dogmatism to approach Marxism from a metaphysical point of view and to regard it as something rigid. It is revisionism to negate the basic principles of Marxism and to negate its universal truth. Revisionism is one form of bourgeois ideology. The revisionists deny the indifferences between socialism and capitalism, between the dictatorship of the proletariat and the dictatorship of the bourgeois. What they advocate is, in fact, not the socialist line, but the capitalist line. In present circumstances, revisionism is more pernicious than dogmatism. One of our current important tasks on the ideological front is to unfold criticism of revisionism. Revisionism of right opportunism is a bourgeois trend of thought that is even more dangerous than dogmatism. The revisionists, the right opportunists, pay lip service to Marxism. They too attack dogmatism, but what they are really attacking is the quintessence of Marxism. They oppose or distort materialism and dialects, oppose or try to weaken the People's Democratic Dictatorship and leading role of Communist Party, and oppose or try to weaken socialist transformation and socialist construction. After the basic victory of the socialist revolution in our country, there are still a number of people who vainly hope to restore the capitalist system and fight the working class on every front, including the ideological one. And the right-hand men in this struggle are the revolutionists. Now we are up to chapter 3 of Quotations from Chairman Mao Tse-Tung, the Little Red Book. Socialism and communism. Communism is at once a complete system of proletarian ideology and a new social system. It is different from any other ideological and social system and is the most complete, progressive, revolutionary, and rational system in human history. The ideological and social system of feudalism has a place only in the Museum of History. The ideological and social system of capitalism has also become a museum piece in one part of the world, in the Soviet Union. While in other countries it resembles a dying person who is sinking fast, like the sun setting beyond the western hills, and will soon be relegated to the museum. The communist ideological and social system alone is full of youth and vitality, sweeping the world with the momentum of an avalanche and the force of a thunderbolt. The socialist system will eventually replace the capitalist system. This is an objective law independent of man's will. However much the reactionaries try to hold back the wheel of history, sooner or later revolution will take place and will inevitably triumph. We communists never conceal our political views. Definitely and beyond all doubt, our future or maximum program is to carry China forward to socialism and communism. Both the name of our party and our Marxist world outlook unequivocally point to this supreme ideal of the future, a future in comparable brightness and splendor. Taken as a whole, the Chinese revolutionary movement led by the Chinese Communist Party embraces the two stages, i.e., the democratic and the socialist revolution, which are two essentially different revolutionary processes, and the second process can be carried through only after the first has been completed. The democratic revolution is the necessary preparation for the socialist revolution, and the socialist revolution is the inevitable sequel to the democratic revolution. The ultimate aim for which all communists strive is to bring about a socialist and communist society. Socialist revolution aims at liberating the productive forces. The changeover from individual to socialist collective ownership in agriculture and handicrafts, and from capitalist to socialist ownership in private industry and commerce is bound to bring about a tremendous liberation of the productive forces. Thus, the social conditions are being created for a tremendous expansion of industrial and agricultural production. We are now carrying out a revolution not only in the social system, the change from private to public ownership, but also in technology. The change from the handicraft to the large-scale modern machine production, and the two revolutions are interconnected. In agriculture, with conditions as they are in our country, cooperation must precede the use of big machinery. In capitalist countries, agriculture develops in the capitalist way. Therefore, we must on no account regard industry and agriculture, socialist industrialization and the socialist transformation of agriculture as two separate and isolated things, and on no account must we emphasize the one and play down the other. The new social system has only just been established and requires time for its consolidation. It must not be assumed that the new system can be completely consolidated the moment it is established, for that is impossible. It has to be consolidated step by step to achieve its ultimate consolidation. It is necessary not only to bring about the socialist industrialization of the country and to preserve in the socialist revolution on the economic front, but to carry on constant and arduous socialist revolutionary struggles and socialist education on the political and ideological fronts. Moreover, various contributory international factors are required. In China, the struggle to consolidate the socialist system, the struggle to decide whether socialism or capitalism will prevail, will still take a long historical period. But we should all realize that the new system of socialism will unquestionably be consolidated. We can assuredly build a socialist state with modern industry, modern agriculture, and modern science and culture. The number of intellectuals who are hostile to our state is very small. They do not like our state, i.e., the dictatorship, and the proletariat, and yearn for the old society. Whenever there is an opportunity, they will stir up trouble and attempt to overthrow the Communist Party and restore the old China. As between the proletarian and the bourgeois roads, as between the socialist and the capitalist roads, these people stubbornly choose to follow the latter. In fact, this road is impossible, and in fact, therefore, they are ready to capitulate to imperialism, feudalism, and bureaucratic capitalism. Such people are to be found in political circles and in industrial, commercial, cultural, and educational, scientific, and technological, and religious circles, and they are extremely reactionary. The serious problem is the education of the peasantry. The peasant economy is scattered, and the socialization of agriculture, judging by the Soviet Union's experience, will require a long time and painstaking work. Without socialization in agriculture, there can be no complete consolidated socialism. We must have faith, first, that the peasant masses are ready to advance step by step along the road of socialism under the leadership of the party, and second, that the party is capable of leading the peasants along the road. These 2 points are the essence of the matter, the main current. The leading bodies in cooperatives must establish the dominant position of the poor peasants and the new lower middle peasants in these bodies, with the old lower middle peasants and the upper middle peasants, whether old or new, as a supplementary force. Only thus can unity between the poor and middle peasants be attained, the cooperatives be consolidated, production be expanded, and the socialist transformation of the entire countryside be correctly accomplished in accordance with the party's policy. Otherwise, unity between the middle and poor peasants cannot be attained, and cooperatives cannot be consolidated, production cannot be expanded, and the socialist transformation of the entire countryside cannot be achieved. It is essential to unite with the middle peasants, and it is wrong not to do so. But on whom must the working class and Communist Party rely in the countryside in order to unite with the middle peasants and realize the socialist transformation of the entire countryside? Surely on none other than the poor peasants. That was the case when the struggle against the landlords was being waged and the land reform was being carried out. And that is the case today when the struggle against the rich peasants and the other capitalist elements is being waged to achieve the socialist transformation of agriculture. And both these revolutionary periods in the middle peasants wavered in the initial stages. It is only after they clearly see the general trend of events and the approaching triumph of the revolution that the middle peasants will come in on the side of the revolution. The poor peasants must work on the middle peasants and win them over, so that the revolution will be brought in day by day until final victory. There is a serious tendency toward capitalism among the well-to-do peasants. This tendency will become rampant if we, in the slightest way, neglect political work among the peasants during the cooperative movement and for a very long period after. The agricultural cooperative movement has been a severe ideological and political struggle from the very beginning. No cooperative can be established without going through such a struggle before a brand new social system can be built on the site of the old. The site must be swept clean. Invariably, remnants of the old ideas reflecting the old system remain in people's minds for as a long time, and they do not easily give way. After a cooperative is established, it must go through many more struggles before it can be consolidated. Even then, the movement, it relaxes its efforts, it may collapse. The spontaneous forces of capitalism have been steadily growing in the countryside in recent years, with new rich peasants springing up everywhere and many well-to-do middle peasants striving to become rich peasants. On the other hand, many poor peasants are still living in poverty for lack of sufficient means of production, with some in debt and others selling or renting out their land. If this tendency goes unchecked, the polarization in the countryside will inevitably be aggravated day by day. Those peasants who lose their land and those who remain in poverty will complain that we are doing nothing to save them from ruin or to help them overcome their difficulties, nor will the well-to-do middle peasants who are heading in the capitalist direction be pleased with us, for we shall never be able to satisfy their demands unless we intend to take the capitalist road. Can the worker-peasant alliance continue to stand firm in these circumstances? Obviously not. There is no solution to this problem except on a new basis, and that means to bring about, step by step, the socialist transformation of the whole of agriculture, simultaneously with the gradual realization of socialist industrialization and the socialist transformation of handicrafts and capitalist industry and commerce. In other words, it means to carry out cooperation and eliminate the rich peasant economy and the individual economy in the countryside, so that all the rural people will become increasingly well off together. We maintain that this is the only way to consolidate the worker-peasant alliance. By overall planning, we mean planning which takes into consideration the interest of the 600 million people in our country. In drawing up plans, handling affairs, or thinking over problems, we must proceed from the fact that China has a population of 600 million people, and we must never forget this fact. In addition to the leadership of the party, a decisive factor in our population of 600 million people, more people mean a greater ferment of ideas, more enthusiasm, and more energy. Never before have the masses of the people been so inspired, so militant, and so daring as at the present. Apart from their other characteristics, the outstanding thing about China's 600 million people is that they are poor and blank. They may seem a bad thing, but in reality it is a good thing. Poverty gives rise to the desire for change, and the desire for action, and the desire for revolution. On a blank sheet of paper free from any mark, the freshest and most beautiful characters can be written. The freshest and most beautiful pictures can be painted. After the countrywide victory of the Chinese Revolution and the solution of the land problem, two basic contradictions will still exist in China. The first is internal, that is, the contradiction between the working class and the bourgeoisie. The second is external, that is, the contradiction between China and the imperialist countries. Consequently, after the victory of the People's Democratic Revolution, the state power of the People's Republic under the leadership of the working class must not be weakened, but must be strengthened. Don't you want to abolish state power? Yes, we do, but not right now. We cannot do it yet. Why? Because imperialism still exists, because domestic reactions still exist, because classes still exist in our country. Our present task is to strengthen the people's state apparatus, mainly the people's army, the people's police, and the people's court, in order to consolidate national defense and protect the people's interest. Our state is a people's democratic dictatorship led by the working class and based on the worker-peasant alliance. What is this dictatorship for? Its first function is to suppress the reactionary classes and elements in those exploiters in our country who resist a socialist revolution, to suppress those who try to wreck our socialist construction, or in other words, to resolve the internal contradictions between ourselves and the enemy. For instance, to arrest, try, and sentence certain counter-revolutionaries and to deprive landlords and bureaucratic capitalists of their right to vote and their freedom of speech for a specified period of time, all this comes within the scope of our dictatorship to maintain public order and safeguard the interest of the people. It is likewise necessary to exercise dictatorship over embezzlers, swindlers, arsonists, murderers, criminal gangs, and other scoundrels who seriously disrupt public order. The second function of this dictatorship is to protect our country from subversion and possible aggression by external enemies. In that event, it is the task of this dictatorship to resolve the external contradictions between ourselves and the enemy. The aim of this dictatorship is to protect all people so that they can devote themselves to peaceful labor and build China into a socialist country with a modern industry, agriculture, science, and culture. The people's democratic dictatorship needs the leadership of the working class, for it is only the working class that is most far-sighted, most selfless, and most thoroughly revolutionary. The entire history of revolution proves that without the leadership of the working class, revolution fails, and that with the leadership of the working class, revolution triumphs. The people's democratic dictatorship is based on the alliance of the working class, the peasantry, and the urban petty bourgeois, and mainly on the alliance of the workers and the peasants, because those two classes comprise 80 to 90% of China's population. These two classes are the main force in overthrowing imperialism and the Kuomintang reactionaries. The transition from new democracy to socialism also depends mainly upon their alliance. Class struggle, the struggle for production, and scientific experiment are the three great revolutionary movements for building a mighty socialist country. These movements are a sure guarantee that the communists will be free from bureaucracy and immune against revisionism and dogmatism, and will forever remain invincible. They are a reliable guarantee that the proletariat will be able to unite with the broad working masses and realize a democratic dictatorship. If the absence of these movements, the landlords, rich peasants, and counter-revolutionaries, bad elements, and ogres of all kinds are allowed to crawl out, while our caterers were to shut their eyes to all this, and in many cases fail even to differentiate between the enemy and ourselves, but were to collaborate with the enemy, and were corrupted, divided, and demoralized by him, and our caterers were thus pulled out of the enemy, were able to sneak in, and if many of our workers, peasants, and intellectuals were left defenseless against both the soft and the hard tactics of the enemy, then it would not take long, perhaps several years or a decade or several decades at most, before a counter-revolutionary restoration on a national scale inevitably occurred. The Marxist-Leninist Party would undoubtedly become a revolutionist party or a fascist party, and the whole of China would change its color. The People's Democratic Dictatorship uses two methods. Toward the enemy, it uses the method of dictatorship, that is, for a long period of time, as is necessary. It does not let them take part in political activities and compels them to obey the law of the people's government and to engage in labor, and through labor transform themselves into new men toward the people. And on the contrary, it uses the method not of compulsion, but of democracy. That is, it must necessarily let them take part in political activities and does not compel them to do this or that, but uses the method of democracy in educating and persuading them. Under the leadership of the Communist Party, the Chinese people are carrying out a vigorous rectification movement in order to bring about the rapid development of socialism in China on a firmer basis. It is a movement for carrying out a national-wide debate which is both guided and free, a debate in the city and the countryside on such questions as the socialist road versus the capitalist road, the basic system of the state and its major policies, the working style of party and government functionaries, and the question of the welfare of the people, a debate which is conducted by setting forth facts and reasoning things out so as to correctly resolve those actual contradictions among the people which demand immediate solution. This is a socialist movement for the self-education and self-remolding of the people. Most arduous tasks lie ahead of us in the great work of construction. Although there are over 10 million members of our party, they still constitute a very small minority of the country's population. In government departments and public organizations and enterprises, much work has to be done by non-party people. It is impossible to get this work well done unless we are good at relying on the masses and cooperating with non-party people. While continuing to struggle this unity of the whole party, we must also continue to strengthen the unity of our nationalities, democratic classes, democratic parties, and people's organizations, and to consolidate and expand the People's Democratic United Front, and we must conscientiously get rid of every unhealthy manifestation and any link in our work that is detrimental to the unity between the party and the people. Okay, well, we will stop there for now. That is really interesting. Like I said, I have not read this in advance. This is Quotations from Chairman Mao Tse-Tung. I had to order it. It wasn't really readily available in my neighborhood library. I thought it would have been a banned book, but as I read in the introduction, it is not a banned book. In fact, it was a #1 bestseller in the late 1960s when it came out. So this is almost 56 years after it was written. And it's interesting to see the evolution of China from a poor, starving country to what it is today. So here is my product placement. Here is my shout out. Is my nail file. And my product placement, which is my Windex. And please let me know what you think in the comments and leave me a comment so I can check out your channel. Big kiss. Bye.